Gwe, Upsalaligwe. Hello, welcome. My name is Neil Silcox. I am the Faculty Excellence Developer here at the Maple League of Universities. I'm joining you today from Gittibuktug, which is colonially called Halifax. It's here in unceded Mi'kma'ki territory, which is not part of the numbered treaties. It exists under the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, where there was no agreement about surrender of land. I'm really excited to welcome people from all over the world and all over Turtle Island. So if you'd like to pop in the chat and let us know where you're joining from, I'm excited to see that. And I'm really excited about today's session, starting with what they do know, connecting new learning to prior knowledge. Our guest today, Dr. Marc Husband, is an assistant professor of education at St. Francis Xavier University and has over 20 years experience teaching elementary mathematics and guiding pre-service and in-service teachers. His classroom-based research investigates how teachers elicit and use student ideas as a resource for learning mathematics, as well as elementary teachers' conceptions of mental mathematics, the potential for using number talks to promote equity, eliciting and documenting students' mental math ideas, and investigating ways to make math visible and visual. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Marc Husband. Take it away, Marc.
Hey, thank you. I don't know, I was doing those breathing exercises and I was thinking, maybe we should just go with that, right? I was getting right into that. Thank you, Neil. And welcome everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. Well, thank you for the welcome. I'm excited to be talking to everyone today about this. This has been work I've been thinking about ongoing for the last 20 years for sure, and then studying it deeply in the last 10. I have new colleagues that I talk about this often with at St. FX in the Faculty of Education, and we continue to talk about how the challenges and the potentials of this work that I'm going to share with you. And we're going to start with a survey, right, Neil?
That's right. Here we go.
Okay. All right. This is awesome. I love these results. So we've got most people are sharing an agenda. Second up is we've got an explanation of a lesson goal, and then a small group activity, and then few people are reviewing key concepts. Okay, and nobody is starting with a small group discussion. Okay. Very good, interesting. I'm glad we captured, our previous experiences, and I think that I'm going to highlight that. Right, what we did right now is capture, our previous experiences teaching, or maybe our existing. Yes, thank you. This is just a slide. It's the literature that I put together for this talk today, and I can make this, I can share this literature with you, the review that I did, and I can share the slide with you as well. Okay, here's the agenda. I'll start with the agenda. Okay, number one, this talk really is about using instructional tasks. What is an instructional task? How do I use it, and why? And so the question that I'm going to pose is, how can we use instructional tasks to elicit and build upon students' prior knowledge and experience? I have to say that the number two, what we're going to do is we're really going to do one. So Neil sort of said this earlier. He said, we're going to be working in a Jamboard. And so we're going to experience this instructional task. We're going to do one and we're going to chat about it. And afterwards, we're going to chat about and to identify the potentials, challenges, and next steps. Yeah, and I have to sort of say, I want to come out right here and say this, that I'm challenged by this today, preparing for this today. I'm challenged by having an agenda, to be honest. And when I was initially putting this together, I actually reversed 2 and 3. So I was putting 3 and I said, okay, well, I'll identify all of the potentials and challenges, and then we'll do something. And of course, I thought right back, it sort of hit me halfway through that, well, That's not how I would structure my class. And why would I do that here? And I think it's important for me to acknowledge that because it speaks to the challenges that what I'm going to be talking about are for us as instructors and teachers. Okay, what is an instructional task, right? And this is a definition that I've come across. It makes sense to me. It's an activity or it's classroom work. And I realize that we've got a whole bunch of people here that are outside of my discipline. My work is in mathematics education, and I imagine there are people from all over different disciplines. And I'd really like to just invite you to think about what an instructional task looks like, feels like, and sounds like for you. Yeah, I definitely would like for you to think about that. In the chat pod, you can write down what area of discipline you are from. I find that that would be interesting for me. I've had the experience to work with mathematicians, so I've seen how this. Experience what this looks like, sounds like, feels like in an undergraduate mathematics classroom. I've seen how it looks like in my math education courses at university for the last 10 years. So I'm just very interested in how this looks and feels like for you. Okay, there is a lot of literature on types of tasks, and there's a whole body of literature dedicated to it. I'm not going to take it up today. I'm not going to really talk about all the details of this. I am going to say that the types of tasks, I'm going to call them good tasks, that I'm going to be referring to are these higher order ones, these rich or these cognitively demanding ones. And, there's characteristics of them that make them rich or higher order thinking or cognitively demanding. And one is there's three basically. One is that there's more than one way of approaching. Number two is that there's some sort of process oriented, and for me that is about connecting. And number three is that they're challenging. So we've got one, I put, for me in math education, it's about there's more than one way to do something, but that might mean for you in your discipline that there's more than one perspective on things, right? And my colleague and I are currently have just written a paper on this idea of challenging and mingling between the known and the unknown. So these are characteristics of a good task. Okay, we're going to experience this now. So we're going to get down to it. So rather than me sort of telling you about an experience of an instructional task, we're actually going to do one. And we're going to use Jamboard. And so just in the chat pod, I'd just love to know if you, oh, I love that I'm seeing lots of people from drama and physics. Awesome. In the chat pod, I'd just love to hear if you've used Jamboard before, or if you're new to it, or if this is something you're familiar with. Okay, so we've got some people, we've got a mixed, used it lots. Okay, no, yes, yes. All right, so it's basically a whiteboard. You're gonna have access to it. I'm gonna show you a few things. You have an instrument over here. You can choose your type of pen and your color, and you can erase, and I would encourage you, so I'm just going to pull it here, and I'm going to, draw some pictures, right? Or if I'll just erase those. And then if you wanted to write something, there's a text box. Anyway, those are tools over here and your whiteboard. So you can explore that today. Oh, we got people who've used it in every class. Awesome. All right.
We should also, can I interrupt, Mark, to say,
Yeah.
Let's explain how to navigate between the different Jamboards, because we have multiple similar Jamboards and you'll be in different rooms together.
Right. Okay. So there's 20 at the top here. It says 1 out of 20, and you're going to be in a group, and whatever group number you get is the Jamboard you're going to go to. So it says 5 out of 20, you're going to go to the 5th. You're going to go to this Jamboard. If you're in group 6, you're here. And so that's, yeah, thank you, Neil. And yeah, so you're going to be in a group. This is your Jamboard, and you're going to, and I'm going to go back to the task now. Okay. Before I get to the task, I want to start with, before we get to the Jamboard part of the task, I want to talk about, this is going to be part of the task. And I thought about, I'm going to try this because I feel like everybody is familiar with this. It might even be intuitive. You probably know this, but I want to give an example of what might not be a rich cognitively demanding or higher order task versus what might be. So in a class, I might say, well, if I just said, what is 6 plus 13? And I can imagine being in grade 1 and saying that to some students, that would be not very much an example, but an example would be, you know, true or false, 13 plus 6 equals 19. How do you know? And so we can see like some more those focus on process here, and that, you know, depending on what I'm learning, this could be quite challenging. So in the chat pod, I'd actually like you to answer that second example question, like true or false, 13 plus 6 or 6 plus 13 equals 19. How do you know? All right, thank you. So we've got some people that are doing the, you know, bringing the ones together and then ignoring the 10, which is always kind of interesting to me. You can physically add the numbers, yeah. So this separation between the 1s and 10s is happening a lot. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. Erin did something different. So she's saying 14 plus 6 is 20. And so then she takes 1 away. So she's relating the numbers to a benchmark of 20, which is 10. Yeah. Now, you have to imagine, if you're an early learner of mathematics, you might take 13 items out, you might take 6 items out, and then you might count them all the way from the beginning. So this could be quite challenging. Now, I am going to thank you for the people who gave me some ideas. I'm going to now provide you with a challenging task. Okay, so welcome to Mars. We're now on Mars. And sometimes when I do this, I will actually like use Martian voice. I won't do it today. Or maybe I should, right? I don't know. Anyway, so we're on Mars, and you know, Mars uses a base 7 number system. And so we're going to explore the same question, 6 plus 13, but in base 7. You now live on Mars. And you're going to work on Jamboards and groups. You're going to talk about it and record ideas. And what I'm really going to provoke you to do on the whiteboard is to provide an explanation to convince us of your answer. Yeah. Okay. So Neil is going to put you into a...
I'm going to open the breakout room in a moment, but I mean, I obviously definitely know this, but when you say base 7, what does that mean exactly?
I know. Okay, so I'm going to try to resist saying too much, because it is it's one of these things that we know in the literature that when we send students to do a task, we actually over-explain.
Okay.
I am going to say that you answered the question, but we do have some colleagues. I have colleagues in the chat who answered the question in base 10. Because we live in this base 10 number system, and it's just what we know. But now we don't live in that number system anywhere. We live in a base 7 world. And so that's all I'm going to say. And we're going to just, whatever meaning you make from that, I'm really interested in.
Okay, wonderful.
And I'm going to say to everybody, there's more than one way to approach this. I'm just going to say that. Yeah.
Super. I'm going to open some breakout rooms. There should be 5 or 6 folks in it. Hopefully you can make it there. And if you can't, that is okay. We'll ask you to collaborate on the Jamboard. I've just sent the Jamboard by email to your inboxes in case you lose access to it. And please check what breakout room number you're in, and you'll go to the Jamboard page associated with that one. So, and also, it's whatever happens is right, is perfect. Okay, here we go. Thank you so much. I hope you had a great time.
My close colleague is with me on in this session, and it's funny because we've done this several times, work together, and I just want to say to him who's watching, like, it's so interesting for us to see like these ideas come up that have come up in every session we've done this in. So for us as researchers, we're looking at this going, there's something to this, that ideas, whatever group we're coming to, similar ideas are coming up, right? So I'm going to go back to the presentation. I'm going to stay here on group 6. So I've purposely stayed here on group 6 first. And I'm going to do something. I'm going to use a bit of a teaching move here, and I'm going to ask somebody to unmute themselves who's not in group 6. Okay. So if you were not in group 6, right, I want you to look at group 6 work and tell me some ideas that they have and how they got 25, or if how they were thinking about it, and they have some really nice annotations, and I'm going to start with their ideas. So somebody not in group 6, if you wanted to like unmute yourself and just sort of look at this and go, oh, like, and I would definitely like to hear from somebody who didn't think this way. So I would purposely pick somebody who didn't think.
I'm game.
Oh, thank you. Yes, there's some. Thank you. Hi, talk
Hi.
to me. Yeah.
Well, so this is interesting to me because to me, this is a translation question, like, or a difference in translation, right? How you're interpreting the 13.
Yeah.
And I think in my group, we assumed that 13 was already being given to us in base 7.
Yeah.
Whereas this group or this person has assumed that if we were taking 13 written in base 10 and changing it to base 7. So it's just, it's interesting to me that that's what I see, is that it's a difference in how you're starting with 13, what you're doing with that number.
Right. What are we doing with? So that's a great question, is like, we're thinking you've really drawn our attention to the number 13, and you've sort of said, let's not talk about the 6. Let's just talk about this 13, right? Which is really interesting for us to analyze and think about. And they've told us really how they're thinking about that 13, right? I'm going to switch to somebody. I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to go to the group 1. And if there is somebody who's not part of group 1, and I'm purposely doing this, so not part of group 1, that can look at group 1's work and think, oh, this is either the way I was thinking about it, or this makes sense, or this, wait a second, this is not how I was thinking about it, but now I'm thinking about this. Would somebody like to unmute and look at group 1's and provide a...
Sure, I can try.
Oh, please. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to hear your idea.
I don't know if my video is working, but anyhow, yeah, so actually we did something quite similar. We actually did think about the 13 in a base 7, and we actually did draw little circles and did something very similar and grouped everything in a similar kind of way. So we would put this 6 together. We added 1 that was left over, let's say left over from the 3. And then we had 13, which was the 7 plus, sorry, my dog is wanting attention. If you're hearing some whining. And so, yeah, we did essentially the same thing, and we ended up with 22 as well. So, yeah, this is really very similar to what we did. We grouped things in 7s. We had 2 7s, so that gave us the 2. We had 2 left over, so 22.
Okay. So great. Okay, so if we go across, we've got the 22. I am really fascinated by this representation of the counting here. And I might, if we had more time, really unpack this counting here. And then we have the 22 again, we have 13.3, we have the 19, the 13.3, we have the 25, and we have 22 again. It looks like they've circled 22 and 22 again. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our presentation. And I'm going to share, I've done this with lots of different groups that I work with in teacher education for different reasons. I picked the hundreds chart because the one group I was working with found it very helpful. And so you can see the 6 hearts on here and the 13 stars, and they've adapted a hundreds chart for a 7 rows, 7 columns. You can also see down below on the right-hand side that we've got the answer 25 down there. So you can see the 22, you can see the 25, you can see that within this board space that they were working with, there was similar ideas like, wait, is it 19? On another board space, it said 19 we've had. So lots of different ideas. Interesting for me, I threw out the hundreds chart because it had been helpful and very few people used it, in that. And I, as a teacher, that interests me because it goes back to our preferences, right? Our learning preferences. Anyway, I won't get into that. I am going to come to this. So characteristics of a good task. When we talked about this earlier, we've got this whole idea of, well, there's more than one way to approach it. And I saw counting, we saw making groups, right? Is challenge. And the challenge is that it really disrupts your intuition. And there's evidence of this mingling in base 10. And I wonder if in the chat pod, if you would agree that for some people here, it was like a bit of like if there was any shift for you to think in base 10, to base 7, because of the familiarity of base 10. So this disruption, and it took a while to think in base 7. So I wonder if that was true for anyone. And if you want to put that in the chat pod, that'd be great. Yeah, so there's this disruption, and this disruption, my colleague and I have been arguing is part of this challenge, especially for elementary teachers, where it's intuitive to know what 13 plus 6 is. And so we can't really kind of help teach students learning 13 plus 6 in base 10 because it's automatic for us. Now, I'm gonna have us listen to this connecting piece is really, really important. It's important in education literature on learning. And so for me as a math educator, connecting is really key for learning and teaching, and it blurs the lines between the two. We're gonna listen to a participant in the Mars, and I want you to listen for what connection they're making and how they made it. Okay, and you can put your answer into the chat.
We're just so stuck on the fact that 13 plus 6 in base 10 world is 19. But even when we were drawing it out, we were doing in the tens units 7, 7, and then 5 extra 5 in the units column. So to us that was 7, 7, 5, or 25. But I feel like internally we knew something it wasn't right, because 775 doesn't make any sense. That's 25. But then when we were done, when we were supposed to stop and look around at other people's work, I finally made the connection that everyone was trying to show it to me, Nicole was trying to show it to me that it was 22 by drawing the blocks. I did see it, but it didn't hit me until I saw the 13 plus 6. And then instead of a 10 plus, and then instead of 10 plus 3 plus 6, they did it as 7 plus 3 plus 6.
So there's some evidence of, well, you know, I would ask, what is she connecting and how is she connecting? And so I don't know if you heard evidence of what and how, but if you can put it into the chat pod, that'd be great. So what is she connecting and how is she connecting? Yeah, so I definitely I think she's connecting to what she's absolutely what she already knows. And she's actually mingling in base, like her first solution is 775, which is like that mingling. There's evidence of this mingling in with base 10. She is, and if you listen carefully to how she says, it wasn't until I saw. And it's this review phase where she's looking at somebody else's work. And you're looking at somebody's work and it's either different than yours or it's similar to yours. And we actually had the same thing in this session. So when the first participant I asked, the person who spoke said, oh, that's different than what I thought, right? That's different. And then continued to analyze. And the second person that spoke said, oh, we did it similar. So this connecting piece is happening at the review process of other people's work. Okay, asset-based pedagogy involves, and I'm going to use some words here, making and responding. The students are making their own decisions on how to solve those tasks, you know, rather than following taught procedures. And the teachers are responding to discussions of the ideas and strategies they have developed after working on the task. So the work is what we're using to teach. And this is incredibly challenging work. And I don't want to limit or simplify this. We actually don't have, we don't have to look too far for some great examples of this, or actually I should say, we have to look far for some great examples of this. In Japan, their math education program, they actually have words for these, and one of them is nariage, and it refers to purposefully orchestrating whole class discussions based on students' ideas. And Madame, and I don't know if I'm saying that one right, is the teacher's summary of those key ideas. So that is the role that they have to summarize the learning at the end of the lesson. But the nariage is these purposely orchestrated whole class discussions based on student ideas that emerge during this instructional task. Now, what's fascinating about Japan, if you ever want to read a great paper, it's called Why Americans Stink at Math. And it's in the New York Times, it's from 2014. And basically this math ed researcher takes all this literature in math education and they have implemented it successfully in Japan. So they actually have this, they've taken North American literature in math education and have had a successful implementation of it. And so he comes back to America to look at their math ed programs and doesn't see it. So if you ever get a chance to read it, it's very interesting. All right, potentials. All right, I follow one of the theoretical frameworks I use for learning math is Piri-Kieran theory for the dynamical growth of mathematical understanding. It's a mouthful. For me, actions and expressions are key ingredients for learning. And that's not the actions and expressions of the teacher, but it's the actions and expressions of the learner. And so when because I know that's going to grow understanding, I need people working and acting through actions and expressions as soon as they can. So they've talked about these as seeing, saying, doing, reviewing. Those actions are part of theory. And when you start with an instructional task, it allows to those processes and it elicits what students already know. The challenge is, how do we use this as a resource for learning? Now, using instructional tasks, the potentials, they're engaging. I read a comment here that said they were energized, right? So like there's there is this engaging way that we can get learners involved in their own learning. They're used to bridge familiar to the unfamiliar. And so that's what we were trying to do with that base 7 task. Okay, now they don't come without their challenges, and there's a big list of challenges when we start to shift our thinking and shift our practices to start with instructional tasks. And I'm going to share a few. First of all, we have low uptake in North America. So this is all from the literature. We don't have a lot of uptake in terms of doing this in classrooms. And there's lots of reasons for this. One is there's this dilemma of telling. And it's the idea, we're in the Faculty of Education, and my colleagues and I talk about this dilemma all the time. Before I let them go on the task, I'm going to prepare them for it. And so this over-explaining happens, and it was almost cued for me today, right? It's like, okay, tell them, make sure they know what exactly base 7 is so that they'll do it. And so it's actually redefining the success of a lesson, and it's tricky. It's really, really tricky, because if you send them out with not enough, it can be a lot of what are we supposed to do? I don't know. What are we supposed to do? So there is this really tricky point around this dilemma of telling, and it's well documented in the literature. Okay. The unpredictability of student thinking. Oh my goodness, they can take you into different directions and things that you didn't anticipate or didn't want to focus on. This is hard because if it can derail your lesson goal. The goal of the lesson could be this. All of a sudden, students' thinking is taking you into a different direction. So what do? And in the literature, they talk about the affordances of teachers offering an alternate way by telling, but then also how that could be privileging one idea over their ideas. So there's like this power thing going on. It's related to control. A lot of people are uncomfortable with this because you have to give up control. And teachers don't like losing control. They want to know, like, this is the lesson, this is the structure, this is where I'm ending. So it's about losing control. This one for me and my colleagues is what we talk a lot about. So we've lost control. Like we're none of us are in control of anything anymore, and we're kind of having fun with that. But we talk a lot about how we can maintain the cognitive demand. And in other words, how do we get students to continue working? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to talk about it here. When it's not the classroom norm, the challenge for the students is when it's not the classroom norm, they look at you and they say, oh, it's 22, I'm done. And they stand there and they sit there and they start talking about what they're going to do in the weekend. Right. This whole idea of the continuing to work, when my colleagues and I start this, we expect that that's going to happen, that it's not a classroom norm, it's a new experience. And so we continue to play with prompts and questions that get our students to continue to work. As the course unfolds, it becomes a classroom norm that they know. Either embedded in the task is what's another way, what are the multiple ways, or it's us prompting, like, have you considered what this will look like using that tool? Have you considered what if you started with the 6 instead of the 13? So, we work with prompts to get more than one solution strategy. It's risky. The students will say to you when they start, and this is another colleague that's we have some really great data coming from students saying, just tell me what to do and we'll do it. And so their success is tied to being passive learners. And this is actually rearranging that. It's actually flipping that. So it can be very risky for learners. The good news is, if you can maintain high levels of cognitive demand, which is getting them to continuing to work and think and persevere and all those attributes of learning, I suppose. They embrace struggle and they enjoy the challenges. And this is documented in the literature. They have found these student perceptions. For me, the most important thing to prepare for my class are selecting tasks. It's the most important thing. And I'm going to say something here, and it's going to probably, it's quite provocative, and I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it anyway. I've done it with some of my colleagues. We continue to debate about this, and I'm going to do it. And maybe later, Neil, I'll ask you to take it out. But I don't use PowerPoints. It means I have to stop using PowerPoints. I mean, you could put your slide on your task on the PowerPoint, and maybe sometimes you do because they're image-based, but I won't go into the reasons why, right? Because that's a different topic. But the most important thing to me to prepare is selecting a task. And then I anticipate all the ways that my learners are going to approach this. And it helps me to prompt for further work and continue the work. So, okay, I said it. I'm gonna provoke some people in later on. I know it's hard. Okay, teaching dispositions. I'm almost done. We're almost done. And this is I think my second last slide. Okay, it's a disposition. This requires you to be in the moment. And we haven't really, I don't think, and the literature supports me when I say this, we haven't done a good job at preparing teachers to be in the moment with students' ideas. And in fact, when you read literature on this awareness that we develop, there's actually continued studies to say, not only is it challenging, but we don't have experiences, but not only is it challenging, but there's not a lot of evidence of us doing it. But the good news is you can actually grow your awareness. You can actually train your awareness to be in the moment with another person's idea and really listen. And it changes what we do. So we're no longer the ones explaining, but we're actually being responsive. And you can use teaching moves to distance yourself. And I'm going to talk about that in a second, but it means that you're more responsive as opposed to the person with all the answers. You're actually responding to what they're knowing and saying and doing. And it's really purposeful. I think it's related to more of a purposeful practice. So those are I think teaching dispositions. Okay, next steps. My colleagues probably are laughing right now because I always say, oh, I don't want to do tips and tricks. And now I'm here and I'm talking about some tips. So I'm just probably, I hope my colleagues dropped off the call right now. So anyway, because they're going to give it to me later on for this. So tips, this is actually from the literature. So did you notice when just before I sent you off into base 7, I said to you, there are multiple ways of approaching this. And I think this is really good. This is found from a study that the students, when the teacher says that, they felt a lot less pressure. So there's a lot less pressure when you say, hey, there's a lot of multiple ways of approaching. Now, number 2, this is something that's my colleagues and I talk a lot about, and I'm still thinking about number 2. They're saying that there's a lot of comfort, the students feel a lot of comfort when the teacher explicitly identifies key terms and connects it to prior knowledge. So the teacher does that. And I still think that when we do that in a classroom, because the classroom is so diverse, we're making an assumption of what kids don't know or what learners don't know, and that could happen more in a small group. Anyway, we can chat about that. From my own research and paper that I've written, I'm going to say prompt and retreat. Get in and get out. I was in part of a research study about 6 years ago, and we were in a classroom and it was videoed, and we watched the video, and 4 researchers that were teachers went in to help a student. And they ended up, all of them, including myself, taking the pencil out of the student's hand to help. And so we all thought about this afterwards, that we were, in our helpful ways, you know, actually saving this kid from their own thinking. And so for me, retreating, prompting, saying something, and leaving is the best way that I will not over instruct, or I can distance myself from their thinking. Okay, that's it. I have references. There's my references. There's my thank yous. Brooklyn Brown, Evan Troop Robinson, and Allison Tucker, and Carolyn Clark. Thank you for coming and supporting me in all my thinking and our thinking. Yes.
We have a few minutes for a couple of questions. If there are some for Marc, you can put up your virtual or turn on your camera and put your real hand up. You can also drop questions in the chat, and I'll happy to parse them out. Does anyone have anything front of mind? Francis is asking the reference slide again. I'm going to share all the slides in an email following this, so you can have a good long peruse at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask about fear and like what fear in students? I feel like you must deal with this in mathematics specifically. There's a lot of fear around that. In theater and performance, I also deal with a lot of fear. So to just be kind of thrown in the deep end,
Yes,
must bring up a lot of fear and anxiety in students. And how do you navigate that with them?
yeah. Okay, so there's actually like a lot of literature on math anxiety. So we have, especially among the group that I work with. So that comes, and part of it is around, and it's related to Carl's asking this question too. So I would never start with base 7. So base 7 is actually, it's very challenging. I've just ruined your intuitive nature, right? I've pulled the rug out from under you, and I've said, now you don't know anything. And so I would never start with that. So the task, to me, it goes back to that task selection. And as you build these tasks that you're trying to elicit their ideas, what happens is you're going to start with tasks that are going to be that make math, for particularly me, I want the experience to be about math being about ideas, which really people have experienced. They come to me thinking that to be good at math, you have to have, memorize rules. And if the more that you memorize them, the better you are. And I want the experience to be about ideas. So I pick tasks so that they have the experience that this is about idea making, right? And that their ideas are beneficial for all of us. And that we can see that in the review phase of a lesson. So I did a little bit today during the review phase, but that would take us like 20 minutes in a classroom to be looking purposefully at specific people's work and then looking at others and comparing and analyzing. So I think I also think that this is part of building a learning community, right? So that students feel comfortable talking about and making mistakes. And when it becomes, and that goes back to the task again, because when the task is what is 13 plus 6, it's high stakes. You got to get the correct answer. But when the task is process oriented, it brings the stakes down. You're saying, and in fact, I heard you say to them today something like, you can't go wrong.
Right.
Right? Like you actually sort of said something that was like, try to bring down the temperature of like, hey, like just get some of your ideas out there, which is, I think, a really nice pedagogical move to begin with learners, right?
That's my math anxiety coming out and me trying to maybe tell it to myself.
Yeah.
Jen, I see your hand. Would you like to ask a question?
There you go. Sorry, I thought I'd unmuted. Thanks so much, Marc. I really, really appreciate your approach. And so I teach botany and like zoology, like which animals are in which order, memorize all the stuff. And I really I've really been trying to like make more critical thinking exercises, but let's say like today's lesson was on what are the mechanisms by which plants communicate with other things. And so I'm trying to think of authentic tasks, you know, so I can imagine using, let's say, like graphs from people's research and saying, well, what do you infer from this? Like, what might be the mechanism at play? But they're just like, it's not like a process driven thing like math, or at least I'm struggling with how to get away from the facts.
Yeah. So okay, so there's this like phase that's really important to me around, and broadly they talk about it as like investigating similarities and differences, right? Like that's just like, what's the same, what's different, but it comes up sort of naturally. Like even today, the way that one participant was speaking was like, hey, this is similar to the way I was thinking. And so I imagine like the task that you're talking about is about like, is it about animals or plants breathing? What did you say? Plant respiration or animal respiration?
Well, yeah, it's like, it's all like, we sort of are like, okay, well, here's what the plant does. Here's how it does it. Here's how we, you know, learned about how it does it, you know?
Right. So I would be thinking to myself, okay, so I assign a group one of these, and they're going to, you know, summarize some of the ideas, and we're going to focus in on like respiration of a plant. And then we would be looking around the room to look for similarities and differences. Right. And it's, so to me, it's like that comparing and analyzing phase that I need to get to, that brings it beyond the what is. Right. It's the what is that I you know, it's like, because they'll stand around. Oh, there's the what is, right? If we focus on the what is versus the comparing and analyzing, which actually for me is and this could be particular to math education, is I want them to communicate in this language. Right? I want them to communicate with the language of math. So that means they need to use some certain tools, and they need to communicate to me for a different audience. Because when we're analyzing each other's work, there's a whole bunch of questions that come up like, I don't know what they did. I don't know where they started. I don't even, well, where did they get that? You know what I mean? And so then that's how we get better at even at communicating. So there's these like process oriented things that are communicating and connecting that are happening as well as, but I mean, I don't know, it's not easy. Like, you know, I don't know. I know in math, we're stuck in content, right? We're like, you know, and I do think that I struggle with it too, because I think, oh my God, they need to know, you know, before they go teach, they need to know like what this looks like in base 10 blocks, right? And I'm so tempted to say to them, to have the base 10 blocks up on the screen and show them and go, look, see, here it is. And then, but I've noticed over the years that I've abandoned that. It always emerges, and I can prompt for it. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's really interesting to think about this in a different context, like yourself, you know?
Yeah, well, and I think I'm gonna have to noodle it for a little while to like come up with a good example of that. Like I theoretically, like it's good. I can see how you're using it in math.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wondered if you had any suggestions on like how to modify that in other. I mean, it sounds like basically figure out what the big idea is that you want them to come to, and then guide them towards that. So it's like, you know, you're wanting the education students to understand how it is that base 10 is used. So you're having them come to that through different modes.
Yeah. I mean, it's this dilemma of telling again, right? Like, because I'm sitting here and I go, well, and my colleagues and I talk about this whole idea of show and tell, right? And yet in this moment, there's lots of times where I'm going, go look over at Evan's work. See that? That's the work I need you to look at. And I need you to see that, you know what I mean? So there is this telling, right? And so telling is not a dirty word. It's just, I'm trying to think about it like I'm trying to think about their ideas, you know, like bringing their ideas into it, because then I can build on it. And that is tricky work. I don't know. I'm challenged by it. I love it though.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'll keep thinking.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Mark. I think we're at time and we're going to have to end. So